Hi, this is Tom Needham, and you are listening to the Sounds podcast and Sounds of Film radio show. Today, we're honored to welcome Ondi Timoner, a critically acclaimed American filmmaker and a two-time recipient of the Grand Jury Prize at the Sundance Film Festival for her groundbreaking documentaries Dig and We Live in Public. Ondi's career is marked by excellence and recognition. She was shortlisted for an Oscar, nominated for an Emmy, and received the WGA Award for the Best Documentary in 2022 for her deeply moving film Last Flight Home. She's also been honored with Lifetime Achievement Awards from Doc NYC and the Humanitas Prize for her remarkable contributions to observational filmmaking. Today we'll be discussing her latest work, All God's Children. This powerful documentary chronicles the 5-year partnership between her sister, Rabbi Rachel Timoner, and Reverend Dr. Waterman. Together, they seek to heal centuries of racism and antisemitism while building a model for uniting communities across racial, religious, and economic divides. The film is a Doc NYC centerpiece selection. So, Ondi, thank you so much for joining us on the Sounds of Film.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is a remarkable film. Congratulations. It's really getting a lot of attention. Tell me a little bit about how you came up with the idea for the movie.
So I actually started making the film 5 years ago about my sister. And I was going to call it Rebel Rabbi because I don't know if you know anything or your listeners do about Rachel Timoner, but Rabbi Rachel Timoner is a really a social activist as much as she is a spiritual leader, a political activist, and also just fights for justice all the time. And so many times I live in Los Angeles, and I would come out here for work, and I would be landing and have plans with Rachel, and she'd be in jail for, holding open an Amazon store because they were providing ICE services for cloud services for ICE and separating families, or, leading one of the largest protests by rabbis in front of the Trump Towers, you name it, she was out there. And so I thought, why don't I make a movie about Rachel called Rebel Rabbi? She's a wonderful figure that people should know about. And I tend to make movies about, I'll say that again, I tend to make movies about impossible visionaries, which are people that kind of take on the impossible and act impossibly along the way and just kind of don't stop at anything. And usually those have been men. So I really was excited about, wait, I have an impossible visionary right under my nose, and I've never made a movie about her. And it's my own sister, So I started filming Rachel, and then she sat down for a meeting 5 years ago this month. So some months before that, I must have started the project. I don't know exactly when, but November 2019, she and Reverend Dr. Robert Waterman sat down and had a meeting, and we had cameras on that meeting. And that meeting was about how to, and of course, Rachel's so busy, she doesn't tell me anything. And She really doesn't like cameras, by the way. So she's not an easy subject, but because she's such the real deal, she's not trying to promote herself.
Right.
So she's like, okay, sis, whatever you want to do. So they sit down for this meeting, and she basically says, look, I want to figure out a way to heal our communities. I want to break down the tension that's happening between Blacks and Jews and has been happening for a really, really long time. I want to solve racism and anti-Semitism. How can we do this together? Would you want to do this too? Would you want to try to bring our communities together somehow? What would that look like? We need to start talking because things are not getting better. They're only getting worse. There were all these sort of violent acts happening where Jews were having their yarmulkes knocked off their heads, and Blacks were having their homes stolen by white people in general through deed theft, but also a lot of very highly visible, Hasidic Jews. So they talked about all of this at the first meeting, and they decided to try to start worshiping together and to bring their congregations together. And I just decided to be there from the first service.
Well, you brought
because
up
I thought because we grew up together in Miami, Florida, which was the segregated South in the 70s, you know? It
Yeah.
was still really, 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 and we remember, she always says that, and this is in the film, that the McDuffie riots, but there was a man named McDuffie who was killed, and then the officer who killed him got off.
Right.
And like totally scot-free, as has happened 1,000 times since then. And so riots broke out, and she remembers seeing the riots from the window, the fires, you know, they kind of lit Miami on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And she remembers thinking, they're right, and I'm on the wrong side here. And
Wow.
I'm scared. She was only like 10 years old.
Hmm.
But she was like, I'm scared, and they're right, and I don't want to be on the wrong side of history. And so ever since then, fighting racism has always been her number one goal. And so this is how she decided to try to address it now that she's gained enough power as a rabbi to be able to get grants and to get support for her ideas. So I'm going to step inside because I should tell you and tell your listeners that I'm in New York City for the premiere of the movie, which was last night. And it was an unbelievable room, but it means that I'm in a bit of a loud space because I'm on the street.
No, it's
Because I
fine.
don't live here.
You sound good. You sound good. Well,
But I just,
congratulations
yeah,
on.
so that's how it started. And then
Yeah.
it was like 5 years of, I did not know if this movie would ever happen, Todd, because it was so tumultuous, the ride that happened. Like, you know, as soon as they started trying to worship together, things went sideways. And it was really their vow not to walk away
Right.
that made the difference, I think. You know, it's like if they hadn't said that right from the beginning, that no matter how hard it gets, we're not going to walk away from this, I don't think we'd be here with a movie right now. And it was pretty much the hardest movie I ever had to make at all my films.
Wow.
And that is saying a lot because I have some crazy movies that tested
Yeah.
my limits on everything, like Dig, for example, or We Live in Public,
Yeah.
which is an insane movie that was shot here in New York
I love that movie.
in a bunker over the turn of the millennium. You
Yeah.
know, so I've been through a lot of situations, but this because I'm the rabbi's sister. You know, just balancing it, making sure that the Reverend and his congregation at Antioch Baptist Church felt heard and were you know, that I didn't have any blind spots as someone who hasn't grown up Black, you know. So it was really important to me. The editorial consultants that I brought on, you know, luckily I'm a member of the Academy, and other Academy members you know, took a look for me. And Trayvon Free, our executive producer, who's an Oscar-winning Black filmmaker, also,
You know, Andy,
you know,
maybe
also
maybe for
got
people that
behind it.
haven't seen the film yet, can you tell us a little bit about the setting in Brooklyn, the history, and what your sister and the Reverend set out to do that you cover in the film, just so they understand the
Yeah,
context
so
of the
they set
movie?
out to bring their congregations together to become family, and really get to know each other beyond all the stereotypes and all the prejudices that and preconceived notions they had of what the others were like. And so they sat down, and they started a core group with 6 members from each congregation.
Yeah.
And they sat in a room and they started sharing their understanding of what the other group was like or what they were facing. And they tried to teach the other group about, you know, the Jews tried to teach the Blacks about anti-Semitism and what that looks like, and vice versa. The Blacks tried to teach the Jews about racism. And they bumped a lot on especially religious differences. And I really don't want to give the film away because it's a pretty dramatic film, and especially on this part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, let's just say they went up Jesus Mountain, they went down Jesus Mountain, and I think finally they went around Jesus Mountain, and that was a key decision to make. But anyway, they definitely had some real issues come up, and it broke everyone down.
Yeah.
And everyone was humbled, everyone learned, everybody deeply listened. And the result is, what I love about it is that it's a model. It's really, this film is a path that groups can take. Like, it's really, you know, we even did like a impact toolkit discussion guide that you can download after you see the film, from our website. to then have your own discussions about it, because to bring your congregations together or bring your groups together, or even to be in a neighborhood, like Bed-Stuy. This is Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights right now. We're talking about Park Slope is where Congregation Beth Elohim is, and Antioch Baptist Church is in Bed-Stuy. And so to bring, they're sharing in a way the same land, the same real estate, but they're living in two totally separate worlds. So they started to just kind of integrate into each other's worlds. And that process was very messy, but very beautiful in a lot of ways. And it has resulted, in something that I think can be replicated. And we hope with the film that it'll be copied all over the place,
I know you
That's
don't
our
want to
dream.
give away everything in the movie, but I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about one of the things that your sister did is she brought a group to see a performance of the crucifixion of Jesus, and did it with the best of intentions, but ended up feeling a little uncomfortable. And the scene is just amazing, but it really kind of gets to the heart of just part of religion that has been a sticking point for many, many years for people. Can you explain a little bit about that point in the crucifixion play performance that was hard?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was not expected. These things happened, like there's a lot of Baptist churches you could go to on Easter and they're not actually acting out the resurrection play. But this particular church is really performative. Like they have a lot of dance, they have a lot of flag worship, and they do a lot of theater. And so that was part of their celebration of the most important day of the year for them, and the
Yeah.
most holy day of the year for them. And Rachel invited her entire congregation to come,
Wow.
and some people came. Like the church went to. It was one of those years where Passover and Easter were back to back, like the day before each other,
Okay.
day before and after. And so I flew to town because I was like, I want to be here for this, I want to see how this goes. And Passover was so beautiful. I mean, it was just so wonderful to see the kids singing together. And little did I know that things would go quite south the next morning, but it was literally the next morning. And of course, Rachel's mic'd, and so is the other rabbi who's featured in this film is wonderful, Rabbi Stephanie Colin. They both have microphones on because that's what you do is, you mic people up who are going to be on camera, who are your documentary stars, but you don't
Right.
realize it is one of those amazing scenes because you get to actually go through the experience that they had there at the same time that you're experiencing what the church has. So you really, and that's the key to this film is really a balanced portrait,
Mm-hmm.
that no matter what happens, the other group perspective is right there. And so it was a challenging film to make from that regard, and also just the amount of information that we wanted to share of the backstory of how this happened, the Crown Heights riots,
Mm-hmm.
slavery, the Holocaust, like shared trauma. There was so much to look at in terms of what is the source of the tension, but also what do they have in common, and that's how I think they ultimately got past religious differences, because they looked at like what the hate groups that hate both of them,
Right.
and have always hated both of them and want to eradicate both of them. And they, Rachel's ultimate dream was maybe we can stand together shoulder to shoulder and actually make a difference on a social level, on a political level, and change some things. And so they took on, projects together, and they're still doing that. This is not over. This is just, there's only so much that can fit in a feature film. So
Can you share a little bit
we're
the one?
stopping here, but the project continues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the project that they did work on together in the movie is an interesting one that maybe not everybody knows about. And I mean, the way it was presented in the film, it seems maybe you can fill us in a little bit more. It seems that for a long time there were people who were able to get the deeds of other people's houses, particularly in the black community, if I don't know, like if they didn't pay their water bill or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's called deed theft, and it's this crazy, loophole in the law that existed for decades now, I guess forever.
How does that work? Like, what happens actually?
They offer to pay for people that can't afford their bills. People offer to pay the bill, and then what they do is they sign the bill. We explain it in the film. It's very hard to explain. It requires graphics and stuff, and it was something that I had to work on extensively. Actually, what you're asking about. So better to see the film, but you can actually see the film. It's available. It's sold out again tomorrow. But
that's great.
It is available on the Doc NYC website until December 1st for streaming. So people can actually watch it.
And they should, and I highly recommend it. It's really an amazing
film.
film.
Thank you.
One thing
Thank you so much.
I want to ask you about is you set out to make this film, and like in any documentary, you never know what's going to happen. And sometimes there's events outside of the immediate subjects that can have a big impact. And of course, in your film, the attack on Israel happened, and it ended up playing a big part in your film. Can you give us a little taste of what audiences might expect?
Well, do I?
You don't have to give away
should
everything.
I give it away?
No, you don't have to give everything away, but you can just explain, why when you were doing a film on a very sensitive topic, how that just kind of added to the complexity of the situation, I think.
I think the scene that really says it best is when Rachel and Rev sit down and they are, it's again, it's after a crazy first thing happens. The first time they ever worship together, things go sideways, and then they meet, and she says to him, and he says, I don't want to change you. I'm not trying to change you, and she says, there's two things going on here. There's the black-white thing, and there's the Christian-Jewish thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that always stands out to me. And the other thing that stands out to me is when Reverend Waterman enlightens us about being black Christians and how white Christians basically forced blacks to be Christian and enslaved them, So it's like blacks have their own Christianity, their own relationship to Christianity. And it's not like all white and black Christians get along type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
So there is this complexity. There's so many layers going on in the film. And there's so much for the audience to kind of chew on that I kid you not, I've never experienced a standing ovation like I did last night in my entire career. It went on for so many minutes. I was blown away.
That's awesome.
We were all blown away. Yeah. And then it just means so much to people. And my phone has just been going off the hook today with people just saying, I can't stop thinking about this, and then the reviews have been like, this is what the world needs right now, given our situation. Yeah. And of course, as an artist, I try to tell stories that I hope will be relevant. I hope that they'll help the world and heal the world somehow. And, my film Last Flight Home, the only reason I released Last Flight Home about the passing of my father and our last weeks with him as a family is because it really was a roadmap in a lot of ways and a guide for other people. I thought this would be selfish. This was meant to be for my own personal archive. It was meant for me not to, I was worried to forget any last word my father said. I didn't intend to make this film, Last Flight Home, but then it felt like this is going to be too important to people. Once we went through the process, it felt incumbent upon me to do it, I had to. Otherwise, why have I been making films all these years? And it's kind of similar with this one. There's so many times I wanted to quit and walk away. There's so many times they wanted to quit and walk away. And I've just been musing about that today, just how sometimes the most difficult things are what resonate the most deeply. If you can actually get to a finish line, you know? I
Well,
don't
it's
know if any of that answers your
no,
question,
it
but
does, and it's funny you said that it was tough for them to go through this process, and it probably still is. You've have spent your career filming people and studying the effects of what it's like to show people through documentaries, and in particular with We Live in Public, you kind of explored that topic of like what's it going to be like when people get the internet and start to voluntarily put their lives on film. And that film really kind of showed how crazy things can get. But I was wondering, in this film, though, do you think the fact that you were actually making the movie maybe made them stick it out a little bit more? Or do you think they would have, even if there were no cameras rolling?
I am not sure. I think that's a really, really good question. I don't think so. I don't think Rachel's got, if Rachel didn't have Steph by her side, because Rachel and I are both, come from firebrand Irish stock on one side.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she would have hung in there if Steph wasn't there. Certainly, it didn't matter that we were filming Easter that day. Like that would have been, if Steph wasn't there, I don't think Rachel would have stayed.
Mm.
Um, I'm not sure, but I don't think so.
So
And
maybe
I think
rolling
there's
the
times
cameras
that
can
Rev,
bring good.
I'm not sure about Rev.
Yeah.
Reverend it might have been that he's really passionate about the film and what it can do. He's a really, really wonderful spiritual leader and a community leader, and he is. I think he thinks this is the antidote for what we need right now across everywhere. I mean, he's already just called me with, uh, I actually can't say this because you're going to run this tomorrow, but I will say it to you separately.
Okay.
I could say it after tomorrow, but he's very excited about the film, and so yeah, I think maybe he hung in there for that. Maybe he hung in there for that. She would just be like, and the other thing that's interesting, maybe since Last Flight Home, because she didn't really like realize the power of documentary
Mm-hmm.
until Last Flight Home. Like once Last Flight Home happened, she thought it should remain private and sacred, and then it has healed so many people in her congregation and around, and she's shown up in the state senate to show it, and she's crisscrossed the country for it. So suddenly filming her got a lot easier after Last Flight Home, as she understands now like what films can do, and so they're both just really excited about it. And I think that, yeah, the cameras have stopped rolling and they're still going, so I guess that answers your question. Like they are now having community dinners every month.
Wow.
They are staying connected, and they are going to take on, I don't know if you remember in the beginning of the film, he's walking into the Dreams program at
Mm-hmm.
the boy and girl school.
Yeah.
And you see Rachel is standing there.
Right.
So that project is a really important project that the church has taken up when the government funding stopped pouring in. The church started funding it and carried the ball. And I believe that CBE is going to get involved in an internship program with that program to give people endangered, youth who are out there on the streets and struggling to get a high school diploma or coming out of jail, to give them opportunities to intern and to, find a place in the world, in the working world, through some of the congregants, like pairing up together. So something that, is happened while I was filming, but it didn't,
Well,
unfortunately.
Andy, I want to just say this film is amazing. I'll be honest. When I first sat down to watch it, I was like, this is probably just going to be like a feel good kind of thing, which is fine. But it was 1,000 times more than that. Like I'm a little cynical sometimes. And what I loved about the story was that it's a full out film, with drama and emotion and serious discussion on the topics. It's not an easy film, but it does make you think, and it makes you feel, and it does offer some solutions, and that's not an easy thing to do. So I really want to highly recommend this movie. Ondi, great job. Everyone should go see All
Thank
God's
you.
Children. And do you want to direct them to a website or anything like that?
Well, for now, I mean, I don't know who's going to put the film out or I don't know what's going to happen to it, but eventually, hopefully, it'll be on some streamer that you can see at home, or it'll be in theaters near you. That's the dream. There is on the website, I want to say, interloperfilms.com. You can read up about it. You can get involved. You can read the discussion guide. You can download it. You can sign up to screen the movie, like in your neighborhood or community. And that's the most important thing. Is we're going to do a big impact campaign where we make sure that communities have a chance to really try this out themselves. So that's the whole idea. But for now, for these next like 10 days or something, until December 1st, I believe, you can see it on the Doc NYC website.
That's great. And I highly
NYC All God's Children. And yeah, it's something like $13. It's like really cheap. So, and the movie tomorrow is unfortunately sold out, but you could try to rush it if you're in New York. It is going to have a pretty exciting Q&A. I'll just say that. But that's at 1:45 tomorrow.
Well,
it's just show up at IFC because there's always like a way somehow to get in. I think generally.
Yeah. Well, Ondi, thank you again so much for taking time in your busy schedule. I'm sure you're going to be in demand now, and I can really just envision this thing going all over the world and people.
I'm actually shooting another movie right now, and I'm flying to Germany on Saturday.
Can you give us a little teaser? What's your next film that we can look for?
I'm not allowed to say. They're about to announce it.
Okay.
So,
all right.
They're about to announce it, and they're also about to announce another film of mine that premiered earlier this year that is opening in January. So I'll be back in New York for that. So Todd, be in touch.
Okay. Thank you, Ondi.
Ask the PR people to connect us.
I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Take it easy.
Thank you so much, Todd. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye.